All right, let's sing together. I'm not going to ask you to stand since we've been standing for a second or two. Let's sing together. What a friend we have in Jesus, all our sins and griefs to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer. Oh, what peace we often forfeit. Oh, what needless pain we bear. All because we do not carry everything to God in prayer. Have we trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? We should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. We find a friend so faithful, who will all our sorrows share. Jesus knows our every weakness. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Are we weak and heavy laden, cumbered with a load of care? Precious Savior, still our refuge. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Do thy friends despise, forsake thee. Take it to the Lord in prayer. In his arms he'll take and shield thee. Thou wilt find a solace there. And now we're going to sing, Jesus, what a friend we have. Jesus, what a friend for sinners. Forgot where it was. Jesus, what a friend for sinners. Jesus, lover of my soul. Friends may fail me, foes assail me. He, my Savior, makes me whole. Hallelujah, what a Savior. Hallelujah, what a friend. Saving, helping, keeping, loving. He is with me to the end. Jesus, what a strength in weakness. Let me hide myself in him. Tempted, tried, and sometimes failing. He, my strength, my victory wins. Hallelujah, what a Savior. Hallelujah, what a friend. Saving, helping, keeping, loving. He is with me to the end. Y'all stand with us. Sing the last verse. Jesus, I do now receive him more than all. In him I find he has granted me forgiveness. I am his and he is mine. Hallelujah, ushers, y'all make your way down. Hallelujah, what a Savior. Hallelujah, what a friend. Saving, helping, keeping, loving. He is with me to the end.
That's enough of the video tonight. We'll kind of took us into chapter 6 tonight as we look at the four horsemen that come on the scene. As we think about the opening of this scroll, which we talked about last week, is basically a deed to the whole earth, and only Christ was able to open that scroll. And inside that scroll, you see all the judgments that will come upon the earth from chapter 6 down through about chapter 20, 21 in the book of Revelation. And so all of it is spelled out for us. And we see the outpouring of man having his own way. The outpouring of God being silenced, basically pushed away, and man, the result of man getting his own way. Listen to what chapter 6 says. Now I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. And he opened the second seal, and I heard a second living creature saying, "Come and see." Another horse, fiery red, went out. It was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword. And he opened the third seal, and I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard the voice in the midst of the four living creatures say, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. And do not harm the oil and the wine." And when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. The name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed after him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with a sword, with hunger, death, and by the beasts of the earth. We'll stop right there till we get there, and then we may move on to the fifth seal tonight. Billy Graham wrote a book some years ago, The Approaching Hoofbeats of the Four Horsemen. In that book, he tells a story of a man named Harry Truman, not the Harry Truman president, but one that lived in the mountains of Mount St. Helen, close to Mount St. Helen in Washington State. And he was the keeper of a lodge there, and when the Mount St. Helens volcano was about to explode, they were going through warning all the people, get out, it's going to be devastating, get out. And Harry Truman said, I have sat here through many disasters down through the years, and I'm not leaving for this one. Well, he refused to leave that lodge and was stubborn about it. And on May the 18th, 1980, at about 8:30, it blew its top. It vaporized 500 times that was used on the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. 500 times greater. And obviously, Harry Truman was caught in all of that death and destruction. But he wasn't willing to listen to the warnings of danger. Danger approaching. Danger ahead of you. And that's what our world doesn't want to hear today many times. The warnings. I want to do it my way. Well, there's warnings that go with your way. And God says, don't go that way. I believe these first four seals, these first four horsemen here we've looked at tonight are pretty much the first half of the tribulation. In fact, the first horseman, I believe, really is an example for us, we'll see, of a type of the Antichrist, one who will come and bring deception on the earth. The fifth one, I believe, kind of is in that transition from the first half to the second half. Remember, I've told you, in the 7 years tribulation, which will come after the rapture of the church, and before Christ comes back at the Battle of Armageddon to set up His kingdom on earth, 7 years, God's going to judge primarily the Jewish people. His whole point is to bring the Jews to Him, but yet there's going to be many people caught up in that, even though they're not Jewish. All over the world, the Antichrist is going to be hollering, peace, peace, peace. I'm a peacemaker. And that's the focus of the first 3.5 years. Peace and safety. Peace and safety. Make a covenant with Israel. Rebuild the temple. All those things. And then He's going to sit on the throne of that temple and say, now, you were looking for a Messiah? Here I am. And the last 3.5 years is going to get bad. Last 3.5 years, He says, you better run for the mountains. And because the Antichrist is going to turn his wrath upon anyone who refuses to worship him. Sixth and seventh seal, which we'll be looking at in this study, is it's about the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation is the last 3.5 years. That's the bad part. That's the part where it gets tough. And under that seventh seal, you're going to see, first of all, 7 trumpet judgments. 7 trumpet judgments. And then that 7th trumpet judgment is also going to contain within it 7 bowls or vials of judgment and wrath that God is going to pour out upon the face of the earth. And so we look at these tonight. We're studying these to just kind of an overview of what's coming in the next several chapters in the book of Revelation. And so these 7 seals are just revealing God's plan to retake the earth. God's plan of battle to reclaim what Satan has placed claim on. What I want you to see tonight is to know this also. If you want to take your finger and hold it on Matthew chapter 24. Because basically what you're going to see in these 7 seals, it runs parallel with Matthew chapter 24 and what Jesus said the end times will look like. The end of time will look like. Back in Matthew chapter 24, you're going to see where it talks about deception, a time of deception, where there'll be many who will appear to be saying that they are Christ, and Christ is here, and Christ is there. Well, just take a minute and turn over there, chapter 24. He gives you information to tell you that a time will come when people are going to, some of the signs are going to be of people claiming to have the answer, have the solution. And he says in verse 4, take heed that no one deceive you. Well, that's exactly what we see happen here under this first seal. Look at that first seal. Just hold your finger there in chapter 24 and flip over to Revelation chapter 6. And you'll see there in Revelation when it said there in that first, about that first horseman who would come out, he would be the one on that white horse. White horse. Well, isn't that Jesus? The end of the book tells us that Jesus appears on a white horse, and it says on the side of that horse, faithful and true is who he is. Well, I want to tell you what the Antichrist is. He's a deceiver. He's an imitator. He's a counterfeit Christ. All right? And he tells the world, I have solutions for you. That's what the devil's doing right now. There's a spirit of Antichrist here now. Maybe not the Antichrist here, but I'm here to tell you the devil is telling the world today, I've got an answer for you. Just take this pill, drink this stuff, whatever. I've got a solution. Follow my New Age beliefs. I've got a solution for you. And so do your own thing and find the solution of the world, is what the world is saying today. So the angel tells us here, he warns us about that. But if you want to look up Revelation 19, I'm not going to take the time, talks about Jesus coming on a white horse also. But this is the Antichrist, the one who comes to pretend to be Christ, the one who comes to deceive the people. 2 Thessalonians 2:8 tells us what he will do, what the Antichrist will do. He will come along and he will cause them delusions and make them believe a lie. 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 8, it says, and he, the lawless one, will be revealed, in whom the Lord will consume with the breath of his mouth and destroy with the brightness of his coming. He's going to be that lawless one who does the work according to the working of Satan, it says in verse 9, with all powers and signs and lying wonders. And in verse 11 says, and God is going to give them strong delusions. He will allow people to be disillusioned by this leader. Who is he going to cause to be disillusioned in the tribulation period? I believe it's going to be people, and I don't have time to go through the full theology of it right now, but I believe it's going to be people who've heard the gospel, who had a chance to be saved, and they said no, or they just played the game and they faked it. I believe after the rapture of the church, if you've heard the gospel and you knew how to be saved and you didn't get saved, I believe you won't get saved after the rapture. Here's why. Because the rapture is proof that the Bible is true. The rapture is something people are expecting to happen, and when it happens, people are going to say, oh my goodness, I didn't know that was real. I need to get right. God did what he said he was going to do. Well, let me tell you something. The only way to please God is by faith, not by proof. And if you wait to see the rapture and you have to see some miracle of God, I believe God's going to send you a delusion and make you believe the lies of the Antichrist, and he's not going to save you after that period of time. So I believe the only people that will be saved during the tribulation period are those who've not had an opportunity to be saved before. Because God, it's going to have to be people that haven't had a faith opportunity yet. The people who've had a faith opportunity and rejected Christ, I believe, are not going to be saved during tribulation. I believe the Bible teaches that, okay? That they're not going to be saved during the tribulation period. You may say, well, I think they are. And that's fine if you want to think that, but I'm teaching this class. All right, but anyway, we're going right on. But it's important to understand that God gives you a chance today to be saved. He may not give you a chance tomorrow. Right. What would be the urgency if you could wait till the rapture and say, everybody disappeared, I better get serious about God? God's not going to do that. The Bible says, blessed are those who believed and have not seen the mighty works of God. All right? So God's not going to wait on you to get some kind of proof. You say, well, I want proof. They're going to get proof. God could jerk the roof off this building and say, boo. And you can say, hey, I believe. But he's not going to do that. God's not going to prove himself, because that's not faith. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. All right? So that's why I believe that people aren't going to get saved who had an opportunity to get saved. Who's going to be disillusioned? Who's God going to send deception and delusion to? It's those who've already had a chance, and they're going to buy into the lie of the Antichrist during that time. All right? So the first seal is about deception. It matches what Matthew 24, 4 and 5 says. All right? So that first rider is going to come and deceive. Book of Daniel tells us that he's going to be, Book of Daniel chapter 9, which, by the way, if you study Revelation, you just about have to study Daniel right beside it, you know, and Matthew 24, this early part, because Daniel tells us so much about the Antichrist, chapters 7 and 9, about how he's going to come and cry. His big cry is going to be peace and safety. I come to bring peace. I come to unify the world. And of course, we know Jesus tells us that's what this one will try to do, deceive people into believing that he is good for them. And so we look at that today and realize that this first rider is a deceiver. He's going to come and deceive the world, and that's what the Antichrist is going to do. The second rider is verses 3 and 4. He's going to come and bring devastation. He's going to bring devastation across the face of the earth. Oh yeah, there's talk of peace and harmony. But when everybody hears about the peace and harmony, there's also going to be, these folks are going to be forced to turn to government, if you will, because that's what this guy is going to want to be, that one world government, that leader of the world. And he is going to come on this red horse, and he's going to come and do everything he can to bring judgment to let this devastation happen on the face of the earth, and war, it says, that people will just say, you know, there was I think I told you this once before, there was someone in the British Parliament back about 50 years ago who made this statement. He said, if the devil could bring peace to the world, I'd worship him. That's a prophetic statement right there. He didn't even realize he was doing it, because that's exactly what the world's going to do. The devil's going to say, I'll bring peace if you worship me. And the world has to decide whether they're going to follow the devil or not. And that's what Daniel tells us about that also. And this one who will come to take over leadership of the world. I don't have time to, I could take you into a study through Daniel where we talked about the Seleucid Empire, which part of that is Turkey. I personally believe that Turkey will be a key player in the end of time. I was just reading this afternoon on the Battle of Gog and Magog. When that will take place. I've been studying that for a lot of years and wanting to get it placed, but I believe it comes during this first 3.5 years. Who is Gog? Who is Magog? Well, I'm going to tell you a big player in that is Russia. Russia's the big player in that. And I'm going to tell you right now, we see 3 people teaming up that is an axis of evil. You've got Russia, Iran, and Turkey making covenants and partnering up right now. Well, that is the kings of the north that are going to strike against Israel, I believe. And in those latter days, just watch what's going on in Turkey. I told y'all this on our Sunday night study a while back. Watch Turkey and watch Russia. And then watch Iran. They're all listed in Ezekiel chapter 37, 38, 39, where it talks about Gog and Magog and that battle. I'm going to take a Sunday night, I think, and just teach out of Ezekiel on the battle of Gog and Magog. I asked Matt tonight, how many of you have ever heard a sermon on the battle of Gog and Magog out of Ezekiel? Anybody heard a sermon on that? Well, I've done a little bit of it, but this will even be more than I've ever done before. But I think it really plays into this first 3.5 year period when Russia and Iran and Turkey and some of their compadres are going to come down from the north and attack Israel. They have found oil fields in Israel just recently. You know, for a long time, Israel didn't have any oil. And it was all in the Middle East. And you wonder, well, why doesn't Israel have it? Iran's got it, and Iraq has got it. Why doesn't Israel have it? Well, they have found it in Israel. A lot of it off the coast in the Mediterranean there. I'm talking about oil fields that they say make Saudi Arabia look small. Don't think for a minute the Arabs who want to control the oil industry don't want that control of that too. And they don't want Israel to have it. So I think that's going to be a big player in the end of time. But also, if you wanted to look back in Matthew chapter 24, you see there in chapters 24, the verses of verse 7, where it talks about that time. Verse 7 says, for nation arise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. So that's just right along with what's happening on this second seal and this second rider. So what Jesus said, you know, don't take my view, don't take John's view. Let's go to Jesus. That's what Jesus says is going to happen too. All right? The third seal we see spoken of is over here. It's the rider on the black horse, and it's a picture of famine and starvation. Obviously, when the whole world is breaking out in wars everywhere, what follows that? Famine. right? Everybody's at war. Things are being burned up. And battles are taking place. And so there's a lot that happens here. The consequences, you might say, of a world at war. But the third seal is depletion of food. Famine, starvation, and all these things. And we see that mentioned again in verse 7 of Matthew. And what a challenge it is for us to understand the value of things. In this, you see the writer also has the scales in his hands. Verse 9 of chapter 24 of Matthew 24 says, "Then they will deliver you up in tribulation, kill you. For my name you'll be hated, and be hated by all nations for my name's sake." Just another picture of what happens in that world and in that time of devastation when people are starving, people are looking for a Savior in the world. And so we see here that there will be a time of chastening, a time of just cruelty. You know, I believe in my heart the devil's always wanted to do that. This is what the devil would do to the world if he had his way. Even now, he's always wanted to destroy, to crush. What are the scales about? Well, I believe they mean a couple of things. I think about Daniel, back in Daniel, and the story of Belshazzar and how that he saw the handwriting on the wall. Remember, it was said about him. He saw a picture of some scales. He says, "You've been found. You've been weighed in the balances." In other words, on some scales, and been found wanting. You've come up short. I believe God is saying to the world, I've weighed this world, and this world that's here now during the tribulation period, He's saying, comes up short. You need a lot more to measure up to what God would have for you here. But I believe He's saying something else too. I believe He's also telling us that it'll be a time of rationing of food, a time of starvation, a time of great hunger. And so we see that taught to us here. We see the challenge when it says in verse 5, when He opened that third seal, he looked and He saw that black horse, the pair of the scales. I heard the voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat, a denarius." How many of you, how much is a quart of wheat? If you had they'd taken wheat out there and they'd beat it out and they'd taken the grains on it and they'd put it all in a quart jar. It's not a whole lot, is it? I think you'd have trouble making a loaf of bread out of that. You might make a yeast roll, and that'd be a good thing. I like yeast rolls. But you wouldn't get much out of it. But a denarius, how much is that? It's equivalent to about a half a penny, or a penny. But it was a day's wages in that time. You might say, well, a penny for a roll of bread, that's not too bad. But it was what you got paid for a day's wages back then. So in other words, think about what you guys make, those of you that still work. I know we got a lot of deadbeats that don't work in this church. All right, I know we got that. But to those of you, no, I'm just picking on you guys that's retired. But those of you that work, think about it. Let's say you make $100 a day or $200 a day, and what if a loaf of bread was $100 a day? $100 for a loaf of bread, $200 for a loaf of bread. Just think, man, how much is the peanut butter? You know, I got to have some peanut butter if I get a loaf of bread. That's the 2 denarii, and that's just to try to survive. Back in the Weimar Revolution, Germany, in those days prior to the Germans becoming a nation again, in that inflation that went on, they say this is going on in Venezuela today. I heard the other day, inflation is 1,000,000%. 1,000,000. I mean, it would take a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread if you could find one. And that's kind of what will be going on in the last days. Kind of what's going on in Venezuela today. Let's just say it that way. The riots, the killing, the wars, the hate, the division. Can you imagine what would go on in the world if there's no Christians? So in other words, nobody to say, hey, let's just calm down. Nobody to promote peace. Nobody to promote love. Nobody to promote forgiveness. And all we're starving. I have heard that if our electric grid goes down, that within 3 days there will be rioting and chaos in America, in the major cities of America. I mean, people just saying, I don't care, whatever you have, I'll kill you to get what you have because I got to feed my kids. And when that happens, I'm going to need some folks to come over my house because we got to watch my cows. So I'm going to tell y'all right now, y'all better come help me watch my cows. We're going to take turns. Amen? Y'all can't come. Anybody wants to eat my cows can't come. I'm just wanting to employ vegetarians for my cow watch. But you know, that's kind of what he's saying. Can you imagine the hate and the chaos of the world? That's what's going to happen when the church is taken out. Can you imagine? I mean, the world needs, Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. And that's really what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be the ones that come along and say, hey, let's work this out. Won't be any more of that. Yeah, there'll be some of the Holy Spirit drawing people to God and convicting people of some sin on an individual basis. But think about it. The people who know love and forgiveness will be gone. The fourth one, let's look at it. It is the fourth seal is a... Oh, by the way, one thing you may want to know, it said that on there, it said, but don't harm the wine and the oil. Anybody have an idea why it says the wine and the oil, don't harm that? I struggled with that for years because that would really be a luxury in that time because it would be used for medicinal purposes and things like that. It's saying don't touch that, so God has a healing solution, so God could still have... But you know, I think there's a deeper spiritual meaning. I believe the wine and the oil is representative of the people who belong to God. The people who in the tribulation period are going to get saved, or they've already gotten saved. They reject the mark of the beast when that comes up. I believe this may very well be representation of the people who are going to belong to God. Let me tell you something. In that tribulation period, God knows which of them is going to belong to Him. God knows who they are. And this may very well represent saying, okay, devil, you may go through there with your war and your famine and all those things, but I'm telling you, just like when he said with Job, there were certain things the devil could do and certain things he couldn't do. I believe here he's saying to the devil, that one right there, that one right there, that one right there, that one right there. Yeah, I know they don't look too good, but he said, they're mine. That they're going to get saved in this tribulation period. Don't touch them. Don't touch them. The Bible says of those who get saved in here, we'll come to it a little bit later, that God's going to put a seal on their forehead and seal them by the Holy Spirit. All right? So we see God's got a plan. Even in the midst of the darkest times, God's got a plan. Amen? And we see in this fourth seal, death and disease. It's the pale horse. Obviously, you can imagine the sickness that will run rampant across the earth. Can you imagine what it would be like with dead bodies everywhere? Death is everywhere, and what's not starving to death is dying from dysentery and all the diseases that are left behind when people have died faster than you could bury them. Well, how do you know it's going to be that much death? Well, verses 7 and 8, look what that says to us. Verses 7 and 8, it says about those four there. Verse 8, basically, I looked and told the pale horse, the name of him said it was Death, and Hades followed him. Hades is the grave or hell, just kind of another word for hell. And power was granted to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with the sword, and hunger and death by the beasts of the earth. You can imagine the animals kind of taking over too during this time. When man is not able to take dominion over the animals as he was supposed to in the beginning of time, now he doesn't have dominion. The animals have gone wild. No one probably running the zoos and stuff, so they've turned a lot of animals out of their cages, or they've broken out and from the earthquakes. But do you see where it says that 1/4 of the world's population is to be killed? Not only the world's population, 1/4 of everything green out there. What is 1/4 of the world's population today? 2 billion people. 2 billion. What's 1/4 of America? 1/4 of America is about 80 million people in America could be killed from this time. Friends, this is not a pretty picture, and God wants to make sure that we understand you better get in the boat. You better get in the ark because judgment's coming. Now, I know we don't like to talk about the end of time and we don't want to scare people, but I'm teaching you because you need to talk to your family and your friends. Now, I'm telling you because we need to let the world know. We need to stop being mamby-pamby, a bunch of sissy Christians that never all want to talk about love, and we never want to talk about a real warning that says you're going to stand before God one day and give account of what you've done with your life. And I'm here to tell you, it's not going to be pretty before you stand before God. It's not going to be pretty. You know, you may think, well, something's going to happen. I'm going to die. I'm going to stand before God. And then, yeah, I guess God's saying, no, I'm here to tell you there's going to be hell on earth. This is going to be a period of hell on earth. Hey, we talking about these things tonight? This is in the good half of the tribulation. This is in the good half. The Bible goes on. We'll see over in chapter 9 here in a little ways a verse where it talks about people desiring to die. And a little later on it says a third of the world's population is going to be killed. What is a third? After this fourth, there's only 6 billion left. And then they're going to get another third. That's another 2 billion who are going to die. It's not going to be pretty, folks. And so tonight we look at these in chapter 6. We see these first 4 horses, the sword, picture of war, the hunger, the picture of the famine, the beast of the earth, and that could even relate to pestilence that's going on with death everywhere. You can imagine I don't want to use the gross terms of maggots and things like that, just everywhere, and the flies and the stench and all the things that's around us in our world. Much less, I haven't talked to you a lot about the rapture, but think about the day the rapture comes. Think about the day the rapture comes. Airplanes are going to fall out of the skies because Christians were piloting some airplanes. Ships are going to run aground or sink. Trains are going to run off of their tracks. Buildings are going to burn. There's not going to be enough firemen to do the job. Police officers, many of them will disappear. Probably the only group left in pretty much full force will be the lawyers. Be plenty of them, yeah. Be plenty of lawyers left, but won't even be in any courtrooms, Nobody honest enough to be a judge, but now I'm joking. Some of y'all probably got lawyers in your family, and I'm not meaning to make nobody upset, but that's just, that was easy. That was easy right there. Huh? Everybody got a black sheep. Yeah. I don't really have time to do the rest of this chapter justice because there's a lot here in the last 3 seals. I will tell you that the 5th seal is divine judgment. We just getting there. This is the transition to the last 3.5 years, so I'm not going to start on it because if I do, I'd have to rush through it. And I think you'd rather me take my time and walk through the last part of this chapter. So let's don't rush through it. Let's do it slowly. Let's talk about it. I want to say to you on Sunday nights when we're doing this, let's make it like it was on the other side. If you've got a question, if you want to make a comment, as long as you don't get me chasing rabbits, but if you got a question, ask it, okay? We can make this kind of a 2-way discussions on Sunday nights. Doesn't have to just be lecture, okay? But let's stop right there. But go back and read Matthew chapter 24 this week and compare it with Revelation chapter 6, okay? Compare them. You'll see they go parallel right along beside each other. Isn't it amazing that the Word of God complements itself? It doesn't contradict itself like it would if the world wrote it. If you had this many different people writing this book over so many hundreds of years, centuries of years, obviously you'd think there'd be a lot of conflict, a lot of things that contradict itself. Well, this was wrote over here, and man, that's not what they said back there. But instead, you don't find that in the Bible. You don't find that kind of contradiction, which to me just validates the authenticity and the authority of the Word of God. All right? So we've looked at the 4 seals. We'll start on the 5th. We'll do the 5th and 6th seal and 7th seal. Get started on it next week. All right? Let's stand and we'll be dismissed. If you're here tonight, you're not saved and want to talk about being saved, please see me when the service is over. If you're here and want to join our church, I don't think I see anybody here tonight that's not home, folks. So we won't go any further tonight with that. Someone joining, but if you do have interest in talking about that, please let me know. All right? Let's close in prayer. Father, we do thank you that tonight we can gather in this place and we can study. We can study a deeper understanding of your Word. God, it is last days things, and God, we We can't be dogmatic about every detail. We don't know everything that's going to be discussed in this, but God, we do want to share what you give us. And Father, this book was written to unlock end-time things. So I pray you help us to understand end-time things a little better. God, that we might be warned, and that we might be better prepared to go warn our friends, warn our community, warn our families about a day that man will stand before God and give account of his life. Thank you, Father, because we want to help people to escape this time. And Lord, help us to understand it a little bit better. It's my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. You're dismissed.